I have been getting withdrawal symptoms, it feels like, because it has been so long now since we've had any meaningful Bloodlines 2 news. The last real update we got, it was around a month or so ago when we got our 4th clan reveal, and the Chinese room, the devs, they said we were going to be getting the extended gameplay reveal trailer in January. Now that is still happening, but they're cutting it very fine, they're on a knife's edge. We can see here that the World of Darkness, they tweeted, "Enjoy the new Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 dev diary before we debut the extended gameplay video on January 31st. So it's January for most of the world. Here in Australia, it's February 1st that I will see it. So not quite January for me, but Australia, no one cares about it, let's be real. Nevertheless, this is their big moment. People are negative about this. There's not a great perception of Bloodlines 2. It's not even really the Chinese room's fault necessarily, because we had the whole Hardsuit Labs fiasco. It was an embarrassment for not only Paradox the publisher, but basically everyone involved to some extent. There was supposedly internal politics at Hardsuit Labs. People weren't getting along. It was a disaster. Even though some of the footage they showed off had some of the old school Bloodlines 1 vibes. We saw some of the characters, the conversations. It looked like you could make some choices. People even say now, oh, why can't we get the Hardsuit Labs one? It looked good. But behind the scenes, the truth really was that they were incapable of making a role-playing game. Even if they had Brian Mitsoda, maybe some of the narrative was solid, the actual game designers, the people doing the gameplay, they couldn't do anything cohesive. So we can get nostalgic about it. It might look good if you go back and watch some of those old trailers, but they were going to produce an abomination of a game. Even if the storyline was okay, we don't know how that would have gone. But when Paradox passed development of Bloodlines 2 to the Chinese room, they were basically expecting them to make a silk purse out of a pig's ear, because the game's already been in massive trouble. Paradox supposedly only agreed to give it to the Chinese room because they were promised they could make it in quick time. I don't even think that was the Chinese room devs themselves over-promising. They've got their own publisher in Sumo Digital, and there's rumors that did the round suggesting that Sumo Digital were the ones who were forcing them to sort of rush it. We're going to get it out in 2-3 years. You won't have to spend too much money to get this out because we don't care about the quality. We're just going to deliver the game. You're going to get some pre-orders. People are going to clown on the game. Don't expect quality. And it's all just convoluted, isn't it? How many businesses have I spoken about? Paradox, Hardsuit Labs, the Chinese room, Sumo Digital. I'm forgetting them as I'm saying them. Too many cooks in the kitchen. 1 million people have been involved, and that just suggests that this development hell is going to result in a middling game. And I don't think it's necessarily the Chinese room's fault. I don't think that they're equipped to make a genuine follow-up to Bloodlines 1 because they just don't have the personnel, they don't have the experience. The people working on it, they haven't really made RPGs before. What are they really going to come up with? That's why the footage we've seen, it's been one conversation with Fire, the main character, and the Nosferatu. How many times have they played that? Anytime they show the game, it's the exact same beginning cutscene. I think it is. Who's going to get excited about that? The 5-second snippets. Whoa, way to get us all excited. However, there is the dev diary, and we're going to have a look at that. And I've also uncovered the HUD, or what do we want to call it, the user interface, perhaps, of the game. There's a little bit of it, because right now, we haven't seen anything like that. We haven't really seen what feels like genuine gameplay. I'm talking about, say, the health bar, things like that. And I just want to show you it. Now, keep expectations in check. We talked about 5-second snippet videos. This is about on par, maybe a little bit worse, but we've managed to find them. The story behind this is the Chinese room were involved in some sort of games tech video that was on YouTube, and they were talking about Bloodlines 2. It wasn't really a marketing piece for Bloodlines. It was just some sort of games tech. I won't bore you with all of the details, but this is part of it. Now, I said not to get excited, so please, expectations in check. But you can see that these are supposedly maybe spell icons, and this will make sense in a second. There's 4 of these that you could sort of see. We need like AI upscaling to have any idea what's going on, but there's 4 icons of some sort that probably resemble spells, and then slightly clearer up we can see what looks like to me a health bar I assume maybe there's going to be a magic one as well. Something like that. Now, I'll give them credit because my worst case scenario is the trailers we'd gotten so far were essentially 3D videos. They weren't actually playable game footage. It was literally just, we've put together a video, we're pretending it's gameplay because we have to rush this out the door and we've got no idea what we're doing. So that was worst case scenario. They didn't even really have a game. This shows that they probably have something that's playable, so if you consider that a positive, given the game is coming up this year, then power to you. And then we've got the dev diary itself. There's been a few of these dev diaries. Some of them have been so lame, so boring, I don't think they're even worth mentioning. It's just people talking about, hey, here's how I do my job as a technical person, let me take you through. No thanks, I'll just go back to sleep if I want to see that. But this one is about combat, and it is being led by the project creative director, Alex Skidmore, I believe. He is the most senior person involved at the Chinese room. And today, Alex is back to share his thoughts on this important part of the Vampire Bloodlines 2 universe. Now, of course, we've got concept art. They can never show us anything real, because some of the concept art, it's at least kind of a unique art style. We can see some of these images here, and I sort of think, oh man, it's not really my absolute cup of tea, but it's at least a distinctive art style. That's not really the case with the game footage they've shown. It just looks like kind of generic 3D that we see in a lot of Unreal games these days. Not really distinctive. So it seems like they try and be creative with the concept art. Doesn't really translate to what we've got in game, which just feels lazy, generic. Now, what he wants to talk about is when designing Bloodlines 2 combat, the goal was to create an action experience that can compete with modern titles. We think of it in 3 main gameplay styles that we want to offer you. All existing Bloodlines fans and players who are new to the world of darkness. So this is all about combat. And it seems weird to me because he talks about 3 gameplay styles, but then you've got the 4 clans, so you think they would have sold it as being 4 gameplay styles, not 3. But anyway, the first one is the Strategic Stalker. The first play style we at the Chinese room call the Strategic Stalker. As the name reflects, fans of more strategic combat experiences, where staying hidden and using the element of surprise is key, will get their vampire predator fantasy. Did you enjoy Dishonored, or playing stealth-focused builds in Fallout or Elder Scrolls games? Now, if this is their benchmark, they're saying it's going to be like Dishonored. I don't know about that. I don't see it, because the only way that stealth really works is to have fantastic level design. The levels, the world, has to be built in such a way that rewards stealth. You don't want it to be so lazy as that all it is linear corridors, and you distract the guard or you distract your enemy by throwing a rock, and that's it, rinse and repeat. You'd hope it's more interesting than that, and the way it can be done in a good stealth game is maybe you have vents, if it's a modern setting. There's ways to climb upwards, so you're not just walking on a linear horizontal path. You can rise to the rooftops, you can go underground, lots of ways to traverse in that way. I'm yet to see anything. These guys haven't shown any footage of the levels. They've barely been able to actually show us 5 seconds of combat in one real go. So I'm very wary of this because they reference Dishonored, which, by the way, is inspired by the Thief series, one of the best stealth series of all time. It's fantastic. Not talking about the 2014 game, I'm talking the originals, the Dark Project, the Metal Age. They hold up. The mechanics in those stealth games, there's just something about it. The atmosphere, the gameplay is great as well. No one who works at the Chinese room, from my knowledge, has A, worked on any of these games, or B, anything even remotely like it. So it's fine to talk about it, but this just seems to be a trend, not even just with the Chinese room, but a lot of developers. It's happening now with Avowed by Obsidian as well, where devs just, they love to talk, they love to put pen to paper and write out their fantasies of how great the game could be. But then you say, hey, can you show us some footage where this is actually going on? And they, oh, well, here's a 4-second video, we'll give you 15 seconds next time. If you ask really nicely and you're not mean or toxic towards us, you can't get it out of them. They don't show it and they release the game and it probably ends up being a scam. So gamers are wary these days. They want to see it in action because right now it's all talk. And they go on to say, if you love those stealth-focused games, so do we. and it gives you time to prepare what discipline power you'd like to use and when. There's something disjointed about the way this is written. I think there's just been this AI push, especially from game developers. They've been doing it with these dev diaries. There's actual proof that some of these dev diaries were written with ChatGPT, AI, or something, because it reads like crap. And down here, it mentions once your plan is ready, summoning the powers of the blood, sneaking up on an enemy, distracting them, feeding on them before a fight breaks out. I'm getting the sense that they're watering down the stealth gameplay because they talk about the strategic stalker. They mention Dishonored, but then it starts talking about combat once again, and stealth to me isn't really getting into combat. But then they're talking about feeding on them or hit and run tactics. That doesn't really sound like stealth to me. I'm getting the sense that a lot of these combat styles are going to be very similar in how they play, but they're trying to say, oh, well, you can kind of role play it. You're a stalker. It doesn't matter if what you do in the game isn't really stealth focused. You can pretend. You can use your imagination. Action brawler. The second play style, the action brawler, is for players who prefer to jump straight in the action and rely on their fast reflexes and combat skills, a bit like we saw in those incredible videos. Get prepared to be blown away, get ready to get excited. Any clan can brawl, but this is where the Bruiser shine. You'll see them in our January gameplay reveal video. Aha! So does that mean we're only going to see action-focused gameplay in the reveal? And it's a bit of a coincidence that they mention that every clan can play action-style combat, and that's what we're seeing in the reveal. If it was my guess, it's really only the action combat that has been done to some extent, and they're going to bolt on these other playstyles like the strategic stalker and the narrative adventurer, which we'll go over in a second as well. So I think we're just going to see action-focused gameplay in the reveal and maybe a couple of new conversations or something. I don't think they're going to show off these really unique, different ways to play the game. This is RPG. I don't reckon that's going to happen. And they even say references for this style of action combat, series like God of War, Shadow of Mordor, and Elden Ring. Are you just throwing out random series of games that you see as acclaimed? Is the gameplay actually going to be like Elden Ring? Come on, even the most coping of copers do not think that it's going to play like a From Software title. That is weird. And then they go on to say, we see the above playstyles as two extremes on the same action spectrum, which means they're counting action brawler and strategic stalker as basically being action combat and not too dissimilar. Why don't you just be like totally upfront about that? Because it sounds like to me the stalker, basically you just approach the start of combat differently. You might use an ability while you're in hiding, and then you just get straight into punching things and doing the same thing you do as the action brawler. Why do you mention Dishonored then? Because you can really play that game genuine stealth. You don't really get into combat. You're sneaking in the shadows. You're using that level design. You've even kind of admitted that's not the case, so I don't really think it's some unique playstyle. You've acknowledged that. You've said it's basically cut from the same cloth. Now, the last one, which sounds the most unique, narrative adventurer. The third playstyle is for players who are less interested in combat and action gameplay and want to focus on the fantasy. You want to really cut your teeth on the narrative and exploration elements of the game. We envision that a core of the Bloodlines 1 they've acknowledged that Bloodlines 1 exists. I'm shocked. I didn't think they were aware of that fact, these devs. They don't seem to ever mention it, so that's interesting. Bloodlines 1 fans identify with this playstyle and also fans of the Chinese Room's titles to date. Okay, so you're saying that this is going to be like the walking simulator mode. Very interesting. So we're making sure the gameplay pillar doesn't add action at the detriment of these important players, so you can still enjoy exciting battles without having to delve too deeply into the combat mechanics if things like character and story are more important to you. Now, I'm curious about this one. I think a lot of people would be compared to just the, well, what they describe as Elden Ring action gameplay. I'm sure that's going to happen. But I just want to know, is it going to be walking simulator? Or is this going to be the result of choices? So they're going to be consequences. Are you just going to walk in a straight line and basically skip combat? Or are we going to get unique content if you're the narrative adventurer? Are there experiences that we will have that you wouldn't have if you are playing as one of those action builds, the brawler or the stalker, whatever they're calling them? I'm not really convinced of that, and again, just the amount of footage they've shown of this game suggests that they're probably struggling to finish it. Even Avowed, which I don't think looks too great at all, it looks extremely clunky, it looks like they can't really make it fun. They were trying to appeal to action-focused players. They thought that the hardcore RPG was dead. It was going to be action-focused casual RPGs from then on. Then Baldur's Gate 3 comes out, shakes it up, and now all they're left with is a mediocre game that they just can't market. No one cares about Avowed. But even then, they have at least been able to show a playable build of the game. There's minute-long clips of it where you can see yourself moving around, the character getting into combat. We've seen a little bit of quests, maybe not a lot, but still more than friggin' Bloodlines 2, where they can't even show more than a 4-second snippet, which is embarrassing for a game that's releasing this calendar year. So narrative adventurer, skeptical until I say more. It's nice to hear them mention Bloodlines 1, reference it, yes, but I'm not holding my breath until we see what's actually going on with that third playstyle. Now, there is something else here. This is probably the most important mention in this dev diary. So we've gotten sort of generic ideas of playstyles, but nothing really super concrete. But what they mention here is how we use abilities is also streamlined to maintain immersion. Are you suggesting if you have lots of abilities, the immersion is gone? I'm not sure what that's meant to mean. I guess it's damage control because you've maybe dumbed things down. Abilities are mapped to the face buttons on gamepad, limiting the player to 4 available at one time. So this is all just marketing speak to basically say we're developing the game for console. We don't really care about PC players using their keyboard and mouse, even though that's sort of the CRPG haven, the PC. We don't care, we're trying to get sales on consoles, so we've dumbed it down. Not saying that you have to have heaps and heaps of abilities, that doesn't make a good game, but I just sort of question if you're chasing the console market first and foremost, and you've basically designed the abilities around that, I just have to question the priorities. But the good news for me, probably many people in the same boat, is I can't really get disappointed on January 31st when we get the gameplay reveal, because I'm expecting absolutely nothing. So if there is anything slightly positive, it's going to be a pleasant surprise. I don't mind. And I will say this is probably their big chance. People are negative about the game. They have to show something at the end of January that does get people excited. It turns this train around, because right now people are laughing. All they're really seeing is the bad. All they're really seeing is what this team is doing wrong, and they brought that on themselves by having Fire, a predetermined player character. They've just shot themselves in the foot. Was that necessary? Did you think that was going to excite people? You're targeting the wrong audience. Again, this is a Bloodlines sequel. You have to impress fans of the original game that have high standards. It's a cult classic for a reason, and they haven't been able to do that. They haven't been able to reel people in. Sure, you get these Vampire the Masquerade fanboys who don't really care, I think, about Bloodlines. They just want a game in the Masquerade universe. Who cares about CRPG fans, video game fans? That seems to be the mindset, but it's all happening on January 31st. Will the game be a dud, like many have predicted, or will they positively surprise us? Will the Copus be right? Will this be some sort of masterpiece? Only a week or so, we're probably going to find out. So thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.